Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Township of North Frontenac's series of meetings for today, Friday, November the 22nd. I'd like to begin by reading a notice. Please be advised, North Frontenac council meetings are recorded. By attending a public meeting of council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Members of council, staff, delegates, and attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior or comments. So our first meeting is a public meeting regarding the zoning bylaw. I'd like to call it to order. The Council of the Township of North Frontenac is conducting a public meeting for a planning proposal under the Planning Act to consider proposed housekeeping amendments to update the zoning bylaw. This includes administrative updates for clarification and the rezoning of a property located on Mountain Road to identify an existing aggregate extraction license. Any person who wishes to receive a copy of the minutes of the public meeting, a copy of the report on the proposed amendments, or notice of the passing of the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw should provide their full name, address, email address, and contact numbers to the clerk following the meeting. If you are attending the meeting in person, please add your information to the sign-in sheet located on the table by the door to the council chambers. If a person or public body specified under the Planning Act does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of North Frontenac before the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw being approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the Township of North Frontenac is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. The first item is the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Hermer, seconded by Councillor Hudel. Be it resolved that council approves the agenda for the public meeting regarding amendments to the township zoning bylaw dated November 22nd, 2024, as circulated.
Are there any comments? In favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, we can go on to the presentation. Dimitri?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and everybody here from the public. My name is Dimitri. I am a senior planner with the County of Frontenac, and the purpose of me being here today is to provide you with an overview of the 2024 Township's housekeeping amendment to the zoning bylaw. So the purpose of the amendment is to essentially just provide some administrative updates, mainly in the removal of definitions to remove redundancy, updates to various sections of the zoning bylaw, and updates to the wording, mainly for the purposes of clarification and again, to remove redundancy. The second part of the amendment is to change the zoning of a property that has an existing aggregate license on it from rural to mineral aggregate extraction. And the purpose of this is to really recognize that the property has an aggregate license on it and has had aggregate extracted from it in the past. The current zoning of the current rural zoning essentially prevents extraction from taking place. So what I'm going to do is just provide an overview of what some of the changes are in the zoning bylaw. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. We would consider these housekeeping because they're not really changing how uses or what is permitted within the township. What we're really doing is changing some sections for administrative purposes. So one of the first things that is being changed here is the definition with respect to backyard chickens. So backyard chickens are also being removed from all the zones in the township bylaw, zoning bylaw. And the reason for that is because backyard chickens are now regulated under a different bylaw. So this is seen as a removal of redundancy. So we don't need to regulate backyard chickens through the zoning bylaw, because now there is a new bylaw that is going to regulate backyard chickens and hens. We're also proposing to modify the text associated with a viewing platform. And the reason for that is to provide clarity that a viewing platform is something that is located entirely on land and not something that is half on land, half on water. The reason for that is we're really trying to separate the distinction between what is a dock and what is a viewing platform. We're also modifying sections that pertain to fences to remove provisions and references to fences and the various rules that guide them, because the township has proposed a new fence bylaw. So anything that was regulating fences in this zoning bylaw and the current zoning bylaw is now being put into a new fence bylaw. Again, the reason we're removing fences is for the purposes of removing redundancy. We're also modifying a section in the minimum distance separation portion of the zoning bylaw. So effectively what that's doing is exempting small residential lots from requiring D-series studies in proximity to aggregate operations. It's also removing the necessity of going through the zoning bylaw amendment or a minor variance for residential uses within hamlet zones in close proximity to aggregate facilities. This is something that was addressed during the 2023 housekeeping amendment to the zoning bylaw. However, the wording was a little bit wonky. So the purpose of the amendment today is to clarify and to update the wording so that the intent, what our original intent was in 2023, and now is interpreted correctly. We're also modifying several sections related to swimming pools, specifically those that relate to fences, because again, all those provisions are going to be packaged into the township fence bylaw. As I mentioned before, we're removing backyard chickens from all zones. Again, removal of redundancy because backyard chickens are now regulated through a separate bylaw. We're also removing the permission for garden suites as accessory uses on residential waterfront and limited service waterfront. This is really, we're doing this to align with the township's official plan, specifically section 3.2.7, as well as the actual section in the bylaw that deals with garden suites, and that section, the official plan and the zoning bylaw section that I mentioned, those specifically prohibit garden suites on waterfront and limited service waterfront lots. But for some reason, the garden suite is still listed as a permitted use under those two zones in the current zoning bylaw. So we're just removing those to make sure that there's no conflict within the wording of the actual bylaw. One other thing that we are changing, and that is with respect to what was it? Was it docks? Anyway, I'll go back to that if I do remember. But it's a minor change. I just didn't include it on my list of changes. So the site-specific zoning amendment is taking place on 1970 Mountain Road, just north of Plevna here, and what we're proposing is to change the zone from rural to mineral aggregate extraction. So the reason for that is because the property has an aggregate license on it. The aggregate license and operation, the aggregate extraction operation, has existed on that property prior to the current zoning bylaw coming into effect. The current zoning does not explicitly permit resource extraction, so we're changing the zoning to clarify that mineral extraction, it has been permitted and is permitted on that property. This change is really an issue which originated from mapping changes that were implemented when the current zoning bylaw, the 2019 bylaw, came into effect. So what happened was we obtained data from the ministry regarding where aggregate license were, and those were supposed to work its way into the township zoning bylaw mapping. And those sites that did have licenses on them were supposed to be rezoned to MXC. For some reason, there was some kind of discrepancy. I'm not sure if it was in the data sourcing, but in any case, there are a number of properties that come up from time to time where they have aggregate extraction licenses on them, but they are not zoned accordingly. So as these issues come up and as we're made aware of these issues, we'll continue to resolve them and continue to bring the issue forward to council so that we make sure we're not necessarily or we're unnecessarily restricting properties that are permitted to extract aggregates. So this is a map of the proposed change. What you see on the left is the licensed aggregate site map. So anything that's in pink is licensed by the ministry for aggregate extraction. And then on the right-hand side, that's the current zoning. So as you can see that yellow box, the RU box, that's the triangle. That's what we are proposing to change from rural to MXC. And as you can see, it perfectly aligns with the existing aggregate license that is on the property. So that really concludes my presentation. It's a fairly short and standard zoning bylaw amendment in my professional opinion. But if you have any questions or anything that requires clarification, please feel free to ask.
Does that new designation restrict residential development adjacent to the water because of exclusion zones?
It would, but there is nothing that so the answer is yes, but there is already a residential development right across the street that's owned by the same folks that own the license, and at this point it's essentially
the existing non-conforming.
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
To the point where, sorry, Councilor Fowler.
Just regarding the garden suites, so basically a waterfront cannot have a garden suite, or can it? I wasn't sure how that works.
So a garden suite is not permitted on waterfront properties under the current official plan and the zoning bylaw, but for some reason, the waterfront zone and the limited service waterfront zone in the current bylaw do permit them as accessory uses where they actually should not. So, yeah.
So you're Roy, and then I want to go to the public, and then we'll come back to council's comments. So Roy, go ahead and ask your question.
I just want a quick definition of what a garden suite is.
A garden suite is it's an additional dwelling unit, but there are specific provisions within the Planning Act, the legislation that kind of governs all of planning in Ontario, that prescribes what a garden suite is. A garden suite is something that is temporary in nature. So typically, if you add in a garden suite to your property, you have to enter into agreement with the township for, I think it's 20 or 21 years. And then after that time is up, the idea behind the provisions in the Planning Act is that the garden suite would then be removed from the property.
I'd like to go to the public, and so does anybody in the public, either online or the council chamber, have any comments?
Anyone online wishes to comment, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none.
Thanks. Let's go to continue with council's comments. Are there any additional comments from council? Councilor Good?
Yeah, I seen it here that only going to permit one dock on water.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly the the provision that I forgot. So the township zoning bylaw currently permits only one dock on any property within the township. What our proposal is to modify that section to say that it does not apply to commercial properties. The reason for that is because commercial properties such as marinas or campgrounds or resorts may want to have multiple docks across, a larger land holding in general. That doesn't necessarily mean that docks are not going to be, we're not going to review docks in any kind of way. Typically, commercial operations, especially if they're on the waterfront, are required to go through what's called a site plan application process. And it's within that site plan application process that we will review the appropriateness of having multiple docks on the property against the provisions that exist within the township's official plan. So in summary, what the change is doing is right now, the township zoning bylaw restricts docks, restricts all properties in the township to one dock. Our proposal is to lift that restriction for commercial properties with the understanding that they're still going to be managed under site plan control.
How are you gonna manage that though? Because I know for a fact that most people's got at least one dock, maybe two. And that's not commercial. Like, so is there a grandfather clause on this, or is this, if somebody complains, you're gonna go make them take the dock out, or what's?
So the current zoning bylaw already restricts properties from multiple docks. If there are properties that have multiple docks on them and they are residential, that is more of a question regarding compliance. And then through the compliance process, we will determine if that dock was constructed legally or illegally. Legally in the sense of, was it constructed prior to the current zoning bylaw coming into effect? But that is really an enforcement question.
Sounds to me like more like Big Brother putting their hand down. I don't like it. So I don't think we should be restricted to how many docks that people have on their property. At least one, anyway, that's not.
Just to clarify, the current zoning bylaw, the bylaw that is currently in place already has that restriction. The proposal that planning has brought forward is lifting that restriction for commercial properties.
Just for commercial property. I'm talking about private properties. That people own on the water.
That wasn't within the scope of this amendment.
Councillor Good, that's been in place for years with North Frontenac, and it is a complaint-based system. So when somebody complains about a neighbor or someone, and we enforce that. Again, that's kind of in place for many years, so.
Any other comments? Questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Dimitri.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Let's move to the adjournment of the meeting. Great, please.
Moved by Councillor Hudel, second by Councillor Hermer. Be it resolved that council receives for information the presentation and report from Dimitri Palovich, Project Manager, Senior Planner, County of Frontenac, regarding the proposed amendments to the Township's Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5519, and the council will consider an amending bylaw during the regular meeting later today.
Okay, any final comments? In favor? Motion's carried. Now to the adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Hermer, second by Councillor Hudel. Be it resolved that council adjourns the meeting at 9:19 a.m.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Meeting number 2. Because we've already read out the concerns, restrictions, the cautions, opening remarks and so on, and the traditional land acknowledgement, we'll go right to calling the order for the meeting. Purpose of today's public meeting is to consider amendments to the following schedules in the current fees and charges bylaw. Schedule A, administration and financial. Schedule E, planning fees. Schedule L, community hall rental fees. Schedule N, land cost fees. Schedule P, fees for license agreements, include payment by credit card, online and in person. Council will consider the proposed bylaw at the regular meeting later today. And I will ask the clerk to read the resolution and then invite members of the public to provide their comments on the proposed amendment. We have the agenda before us.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved that council approves the agenda for the public meeting regarding amendments to the fees and charges bylaw dated November 22nd, 2024, as circulated.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. So now we can go on to the amendments to the fees and charges bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Amendments to the Fees and Charges Bylaw. And that council will consider the bylaw during the regular council meeting later today to amend the fees and charges bylaw and repeal bylaw 6323.
So first up is comments from the public, either in the council chambers or online.
Again, if anyone online wishes to make comment, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none.
Seeing none, does any member of council have any comments to add? Seeing none. We can call the motion then. So. All in favor of the resolution? Carried. So adjournment of the meeting.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved the council adjourns the public meeting at 9:22 a.m.
Comments? In favor? Carried. That meeting is adjourned. Okay, our regular council meeting, we'll call it to order. The approval of the agenda.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, seconded by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved the council approves the agenda dated November 22nd, 2024, as circulated.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Counselor Hudel.
So I, Roy Huda, declare pecuniary interest in item 10H on November 22nd, 2024 council meeting as a family member of mine directly involved in circular materials.
Thank you, Counselor Hudel. Anybody else? Okay. On to business profile, Brandon's Lawn Care.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, seconded by Counselor Hermer. Be it resolved the council receives for information the business profile of Brandon's Lawn Care provided by the Economic Development Task Force.
Are there any comments? Okay, in favor of accepting this? Carried. Let's move on to presentation. Intact Public Entities Municipal Insurance. Thank you for joining us.
Think of that. We'll find out, won't we? All right. You ready?
Perfect. Well, first off, good morning to everybody. Good morning, your worship, members of council, as well as public. My name is Daryl Messiah. I'm the account manager here for Intact Public Entities for Eastern Ontario. I'm joined by your local broker, Megan of McDougall Insurance. I also just want to say congratulations to your worship for the warning position. That's very exciting. I've been asked to come out here by Corey and Kelly, your treasurer as well, to discuss municipal insurance, sort of in a broad scope, and touch on what IP is seen across Canada and what we're hoping to see for Q1 for 2025. Yeah, perfect. So just a little bit of history about IP. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Frank Cowan Company, our predecessor. Really, we've been in municipal insurance since 1932. We have over 90 years in municipal and community service, risk management, claims expertise. And all our partners are long-term and understand our program and market conditions and complex claims. As municipal insurance is kind of special, unique, unlike other types of insurance. As we said, we're going to look at a quick municipal insurance overview. Always happy to come back and go in depth if you have any questions. As this is open session, there may be certain things I may not be able to disclose, but I'll do my best to answer any questions or concerns. Really, what impacts are we seeing in 2024, as well as what we think 2025 will look like. The importance of risk management services and our value-added services that can help municipalities such as yourselves, as well as I've been asked to talk a little bit about special events and how they can impact municipalities, small, urban, agriculture, etc. So the first thing we're seeing really is the municipal market still kind of really is in a state of flux at this moment. A lot of things are impacting rate, performance, and market demands. Obviously, the big ones we're seeing is climate, the legal landscape, pressures on the current financial sector, as well as the long tail nature of municipal claims. Normally, they can exceed a decade at times. We hope they don't, but sometimes that happens. Oh, it is perfect. It's hard really not to talk about insurance without talking about climate change. What's a 100-year storm now occurs with increased frequency. I believe you all remember the forest fires we had 2 years back now, and even last year and this year as well with the national park that was damaged. And in the winter, we saw a record, I believe, approximately 90 zombie fires. For those who don't know, zombie fires are fires that continue to burn in the wintertime underneath the ice, permafrost, etc., and start back up. And while there's not enough data on these zombie fires, we are seeing an increased frequency of extreme weather, helping with these heat waves that come in and these huge, massive fires that move with increased speed. Luckily, most population centers this year were not impacted. However, this is something we're monitoring quite closely as it is going to have a future impact on insurance. Also, I think about 9 out of the 10 most severe property events have occurred in the last 11 years, and this has severely impacted property rates across Canada. So society in general has become more litigious. We're seeing even for motor vehicle accidents, 91% of claimants now have some sort of legal representation. This is somewhat of a new occurrence. Not everybody lawyered up before. We used to say we're not like our neighbors to the south. However, that is changing and people are pursuing legal action, which is their right. However, it is having an increase in reserves for claims, as well as making claims go on for longer, as you might not be served for notice until the last day of you're allowed to claim, which may be the day before 2 years. And then now you have that extended process, which keeps that claim open for longer, which does have more costs to insurance companies, municipalities, as well as any claimants or third parties. Another thing that we're seeing, I don't see it there, is class action lawsuits. They have increased in frequency since there was a certification process. It's now much easier, and more plaintiff lawyers are pursuing these lucrative claims, and as municipalities exposed. And many times municipalities may be innocent to these allegations. They're a lot more difficult to defend and involve highly specialized legal aid, investigation, and so forth, and they end up being much costlier to defend. And these class action lawsuits can remain open for years and years as well. Perfect. So it's, I mean, we're talking about climate change. It's November. I have a fly here. Weird. Oh, managing risks. So when we look at what we mean by risk management, we mean a more holistic approach, apologies. So you're looking at your hazards, operational, financial, strategic risk. Basically, the culture of risk management needs to be embedded in almost everything municipalities do now. I always kind of compare it to how before we used to drive around without our seatbelts, and now the first thing you do is you put your seatbelt on before you even leave. Same thing now when you're looking at policy decisions or implications or any strategic decision. How can we minimize the risk? Of course, IP's whole philosophy is trying to reduce and be proactive instead of waiting for a huge loss to occur and we wonder how did this happen. To speak to that, part of what IP offers is our value-added services. I'm very biased with our value-added services as I come from the risk management department before becoming a regional manager. We have engineers, roads, fleet specialists, paralegals, you name it. They are specialists in their field first, insurance people second. So we can put on contract meetings, webinars, seminars, anything really that Megan gets sent from Corey or whoever that may be in terms of an investigation standpoint, in terms of advice. We happily do so, and this is all at no added costs. We also do inspections at no added cost, which are immensely valuable as they come with a risk report in terms of priorities, gives you about asset evaluation, and little things like even having a road specialist or a fleet specialist can assist you with MMS standards and so forth. As we discussed, we're seeing road claims right now, sort of the highest driver of claims outside of the extreme weather and so forth. So it's not to say you guys aren't taking advantage of this, by the way. So far, I've had about 12 advisory service requests, which includes contract reviews, ARM advice. So we've actually had someone go and look up and investigate and do research to provide a proper response to the municipality. And we have done in 2019, 20 inspections of different locations. We normally do inspections about every 6 years or so. So most likely we'll be reaching out at some point on having somebody come out here and start looking at your buildings, assets, and so forth, and provide evaluations for all of those. So what else can municipalities do in terms of municipal action? Well, we already talked about reducing exposure, mitigating your risks, managing your claim frequency, but also viewing insurance as a service in your total cost of risk and not necessarily just what is this covered for, but what am I getting? Am I getting risk management? Am I getting value-added services such as contract reviews, litigation assistance? Do they have claim specialists that can help manage these expensive claims? Those are super important, as unfortunately municipal insurance is highly specialized now at this time. Less claims, lower premium. It's the easiest way to sum it up, but we always look at all municipalities individually. As I said, what will impact a rural agriculture? Small town is not going to be the same claims and risks that's going to impact a larger municipality, and what services are they providing? Completely different, and we try to look at every municipality individually. One of the things I do believe we were up not too long ago, kind of discussing with Corey, was certain things, local events. So what is so crazy about a local event is you have a change to your risk profile. All of a sudden now you have outside people, visitors coming to a new town. They might not know the roads or common knowledge. I always think sometimes when you're going down these country roads and it says recommended speed 80 kilometers, and we all know there's that one bend you do not want to take at 80 kilometers in wet rain. A newcomer may not know certain things like that, may have large disruptions to traffic, or if it is a large event, is that road now blocked, and how are EMS services going to detour or get through? These are all things that need to be discussed and advised when you're thinking about having a special event in your community. Further key considerations are there agreements in place with the organizer, or is it just a handshake? Are there slip and fall hazards? Will there be alcohol permitted? You discuss road closures, little things like security, believe it or not, protection of those assets. Who's responsible for that? A lot of time in smaller municipalities, they may allow camping. We have unfortunate situations where maybe people park their vehicles, maybe there's alcohol consumption, etc. And now you have a camper involved and it's dark. That vehicle then leaves, may hit that person in the tent and so forth. There's been unfortunate claims involving that. Where are people allowed to park? Where are people allowed to camp? Are there designations? Is there someone monitoring this? And that then kind of leads into who's responsible for that training. Would that be up to the organizer or the municipality assisting? Are there volunteer supports in place? Really, it depends on what you're thinking of doing. I've had everything from ice pond fishing to fencing to birding. All municipalities have great ideas of what they want to do. How can you do it safely? We're not here to stop the fun. We're just here to try to help you, assist you as best as we can to limit any dangers that may involve. So is it a family event versus snowmobile racing? Now, one thing we do have for small members of your community is what's called a facility user solution group. I'm not going to say that every time, so we call it FUS for short. And really that's for members of your community to access your facilities, basically. So you do have this policy in place. It is a separate policy than your municipal package. And really it's for, as I said, cultural community groups, sporting events, but it would be unorganized sporting events. So we're not looking for organized sports teams or leagues or high-risk sports such as contact hockey. But you know, the list is on there. What we see a lot of is birthday parties, bridge, pickleball is ever increasing. It seems to be a craze around right now. Basketball, things like that. Small events, we can always make exceptions as well, and take it risk by risk, provided it's nothing too extreme. So this provides a coverage for the municipality or a liability amount, so you know you're insulated and protected in the event if there is a loss or a claim. Now, sure there's many questions, maybe not, but that concludes my presentation. Just kind of want a broader view on market conditions.
First of all, thank you very much, both of you, for coming out in this very wet morning and giving us a presentation. Are there any comments from council? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate the information.
Thank you, Your Worship. It added that mountain of excitement.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives for information the presentation from Daryl Messiah, Account Manager, and Megan Scully, Broker of Intact Public Entities regarding municipal insurance, and thanks them for their time spent today.
Final comments? In favor? That's carried. We now have a delegation from Siegel Construction, talking about developing attainable or seniors housing through a municipal housing corporation.
There we go. Hi there. How are you this morning? Can you hear me all right?
Welcome. The floor
Thank
is yours.
Great. Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Daniel Siegel. I'm a Tarion builder from Siegel Construction, who's taken it upon himself to address a big, hairy issue of the housing crisis in Ontario over the last few months. And what I'm hoping to do today is present a model that addresses the housing crisis in the province. I've done this to many other councils in the province. And the reason I'm doing this is I think it's a great idea that could be applied in pretty much maybe 80 to 90% of the municipalities in the province. And I'm looking to ideally have this presentation referred to staff for further discussion. First off, I want to address the risk of bonusing. I know that every single time I present this, it always comes up. So in this one, I'll just tackle it head on. Anytime there's a social benefit and a for-private company offers to address it, there's always a gap between the cost of providing the service and the fair market value. And in order to address that risk and make it economically feasible, there is always an ask. And council always looks at me with, one eye gives you the crook eye when this comes up. And the only way to address it is to have somebody work as an agent for a municipal housing corporation so that it's a fee-based service. Because otherwise, obviously, it opens people up to municipal bonusing. In any case, a little bit of a digression there, but basically, the climate as I see it across the province is upper tier municipalities are responsible for housing from transitional housing right up to rent geared to income. And then there's a chasm between where upper tier municipalities' housing responsibilities end and where the private sector is actively looking to develop housing inventory. And this model that I'm addressing targets affordable home ownership only. The reason I think that this is important is it's not really being done at scale. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this model is based on a model south of the border in Michigan. So I've been working very closely with James Tischler, who's the head of the Michigan Land Bank, to develop this model. And I think it has the ability to be applied in Canada, only it requires coordination of different levels of government. So with that, I'm going to just present the general idea here. And some of you may cringe at this, but why not? The idea here is that the municipality needs to realize that entry-level houses for the newlyweds and nearly deads of the province need to realize that this type of housing isn't going to be built on its own without government support. And so the idea would be to do a subdivision of entry-level or affordable houses that are developed through a municipal housing corporation and sold at or less than the affordable purchase price as defined by Bill 23. And so Bill 23 has an appendix that talks about when development charges could be waived. And generally, that it's a spreadsheet. There's 444 municipalities, and you just find your number there. And to achieve this, I think it accomplishes two goals. A lot of the people who rely on social housing probably wouldn't want to rely on it if they had another opportunity. The fact is that affordable houses are almost like a scarce resource that needs protection. They were built in scale in the 1920s to the 1940s, and then again in the 1980s with the MERP program. Aside from that, affordable housing really hasn't been built. And in fact, people like myself who have flipped houses in the past are actually guilty of killing off this scarce resource, because essentially we're taking a below market value house, and usually you'd be adding extra bedrooms and bathrooms and then pushing it out of the affordable category into the unaffordable category. And the reason that I think this is important is 15 years ago, it was likely cheaper to buy than it would be to rent. So in my particular situation, I was renting at around $1,500 a month. But then when I bought my first house, the effective rent payment went down to $1,300. These days, you're looking at renting maybe at around $2,000 a month, but your effective mortgage payment is now $4,000 a month. And that's primarily because it's really hard to find an entry-level house that doesn't need a ton of work at an upkeep price similar to that of rent. And to address that, I think that the solution is increasing the inventory of entry-level houses. And I really haven't seen a market that addresses this as well as a municipality south of the border, where they've been doing this since 2018 and have built 200 affordable houses through their Brownfield Act legislation. So that's the gist of it. There are a couple of details that I wanted to go into, because when I was presenting this to Newmarket, the mayor there addressed one particular issue that I think is a great point. And he said, Dan, I like the model, but I'm worried about it appearing like a lottery. So, and you could absolutely understand where he's coming from there, because if you're only building 10 to 20 houses, then frankly, everyone should be lining up to buy these houses only to flip it 2 years later. And that's where a community land trust comes in. It's not really being practiced so heavily in Canada, but south of the border, it's a well-trodden structure to ensure that future generations have affordable housing. And there's an equity split model where if somebody buys a house and then sells it, they don't get full possession of the bump in their equity, as though the community land trust would take a large portion of that appreciation in value to put into its reserves to be able to offer future owners a discount on the price, or use those funds for upkeep or maintenance purposes. So with that, I would love to talk to staff in greater detail about this model. I think that there's merit to it. I'm currently looking at some projects in nearby municipalities that I'd be more than happy to share with staff on a private conversation, not on a public forum such as this. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have to see how we could scale this model in North Frontenac. Thank you for your time.
So thank you very much, Mr. Siegel. We appreciate the time. Does anybody in council have any questions? Councillor Fowler, then Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, basically, what's the size of the unit? I'm looking at one here that you have in your presentation.
Yeah.
It's like a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yep. So great question. I guess the first question is, what is the target market for North Frontenac if this was interesting? Would it be first-time home buyers? Would it be seniors? Would it be transitional housing? Or would it be temporary worker housing? With that, I have different models for each target market. The vanilla version of this is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath detached house that's somewhere between 600 and 700 square feet. That would be fully prefabricated in a factory before it's made available for sale.
Deputy Mayor?
Hello, Daniel. I'm
Hello.
part of a 3-person group on 2 of us are on council. One of us is a local citizen. We've been looking at low-cost solutions, what we're calling affordable housing, and I'm really glad this is happening now. You've come up with a financial proposal that it looks fascinating. I think among the 3-person group that I'm working with, our big challenge is to get this before council as a whole as an idea that would be supported. So I'd be very much in favor of you talking individually with staff members, just to get us thinking about possible financial solution. We've seen the same thing. You can't build an entry or exit level house. The exit in this case would be seniors who can no longer live independently. We've seen you can't really do this alone without some help. So another big challenge for this township is whether to get involved in an entrepreneurial scheme like this. This would be brand new for us. So this is a discussion that has to happen in council. So any communication that you can help work with, we can work on, would be welcome. Thank you.
Everyone else, Councillor Regent.
Danielle, it's Stephanie Regent. I'm one of the other two people that our deputy mayor is referring to. That's on the subcommittee for affordable housing. Danielle is here as well. I'm thrilled that you're doing this presentation today, and I would echo everything that our deputy mayor said. I would love an opportunity to perhaps even have our subcommittee delve into this with you a little bit deeper, because this is absolutely necessary here. And I don't know how you found us, but I'm so thrilled you made this presentation.
Thank you. So I just a little background here. I've reached out to about 300 of the 404 municipalities in the province, only because I feel like this type of knowledge is scalable and everybody wins if this model gets built. I'm not looking to build every single one myself. I'm looking for local partners to work with. My goal isn't to make a lot of money on one house. It's to be able to feed my family building 1,000 houses across the province. I would love the opportunity to show you my robust business plan and tailor it to things that make sense in your community. And again, I'm not coming into this thinking that I am capable of providing everything independently. This only works if it's a multi-level P3 partnership where it fits what you're looking for, and we're able to leverage local partners as well.
Councillor Fowler.
Yes, I see in your report that there's $250,000 to $300,000 for cost. Does that include septic, land, water, and any other utilities that are involved?
So it really depends on the site selection process. That is a very costly and timely step, and depending on the site. So for example, I'm looking at one right now where the municipality already identified it as a potential site for a subdivision for affordable housing, which makes it a lot easier as compared to another site where I basically need to jump through 4 consistent hoops to get an appropriate site. It's quite a bit more difficult, time consuming, and costly. That number represents a number of things. So just the pure cost of the acquisition of the house, plus fees such as carry-on fees and typical service requests and time we know we need to spend on site to get the site ready. There's fluctuation within that number. I'm completely transparent with my costing on a one-to-one level, and we could dive into those details so that you could have a better idea of what those numbers consist of from a planning, site preparation, deployment, and normalization perspective of the property.
Councillor Hermer.
I just want to make.
No, I want Councillor Hermer, then I'll go back to you.
Danielle, what would be your cost per square foot?
It really depends on the unit that we're trying to put in there. So if we're looking at a small worker housing unit, maybe we're looking at something around 300 to 400 square feet versus a seniors housing unit or maybe a first-time homebuyers unit, which might be slightly bigger, might have different conveniences. It really depends on what Lego piece you want to put into the subdivision. At this point, what I see my role is basically saying these are your options. Choose something that makes sense for your community, or at least guide me to help you choose what fits best from a price perspective. There is quite a lot of funding out there for municipal housing developments of affordable housing, and we haven't even opened the door to co-op funding. There are a lot of different options to basically make the pro forma look better. What I'm showing here is almost like a worst case scenario, but ultimately it depends on the site selection.
Councillor Fowler.
I just want to thank you very much for your presentation. You've given us a lot of data to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Regent.
Daniel, as far as the funding is concerned, is that something you would help us with?
Absolutely. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
so I think the only way that this works, as I was alluding to earlier in the bonusing aspect, the only way that I could be involved and bring a level of professionalism to this project without the risk of bonusing and basically taking staff away from their everyday job and putting more work on their plate is to act as an agent for a municipal housing corporation. Otherwise, there's way too much risk. Even if it was a request for proposal, I'm not a huge, my capacity isn't necessarily there to be able to do every single step along the way. And so as an agent in a municipal housing corporation, who knows the steps that need to be taken, the procurement of each subcontract could be done through a bids and tenders platform to adhere to the municipal sourcing bylaws for North Frontenac. And I think that would include writing these grant applications to the vertical and horizontal integration of the infrastructure and the deployment of the houses. It would make a lot of sense to work in that capacity.
No, I'm going to thank you again. I'm thrilled. This is like an early Christmas gift that you're here.
Thank you. That's,
Thrilled.
I'm glad that resonates.
Daniel, it's the mayor. I have a housing background and I'm in favor of building attainable housing or supporting the construction of it and ensuring that people are properly housed and so on. But I have a couple questions about this proposal.
Certainly.
You just mentioned, and it's in the resolution and it's in the presentation, you would want to do this through a municipal housing corporation. That would cost us a lot of money to set up, in fact, a tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of time. And it would remove any risk from the township directly. Have you ever thought about having municipalities partner together?
So I'll address this in 2 points. So one of the projects I'm looking at currently, this particular issue came up, and instead of inventing a new municipal housing corporation, I've reached out to existing municipal housing corporations to say, listen, I have a project I want to bring under your umbrella. Would you be open to it? I agree with you, setting it up from scratch is costly, but I think moving it into an existing one makes a lot of sense. To your second point about having municipalities work together, I think now we're on to an issue of annual repayment limits and Ministry of Municipal Affairs and housing regulations on debt ceilings. And my general feeling here is that these types of projects should not impact your operating or capital budgets. And in order to do so, it makes a lot of sense to have any projects which are capital intensive off your balance sheet. And I think that if you were to partner with an existing municipality that might be perceived negatively from your reporting perspective, which is the first thing. The other thing I also wanted to mention was that part of being able to deliver an affordable house would involve separating the value of the land and the servicing of the land from the cost of the house. And so in a lot of these models, I'm looking at doing a novel idea, which is actually not even that novel, but is a land lease, where you're basically only getting a mortgage, and it's called a leasehold mortgage, on the building and not on the land. And in doing so, you're able to accomplish a few things. But one of them is to provide a lower cost purchase price for a homeowner. But you're also able to generate a stream of income payments to the municipal housing corporation or to the municipality in lease payments. And then finally, you're able to make your financial statements look a lot better because you have an asset on your balance sheet with a stream of revenue without a corresponding liability, because all your costs of construction have already been paid for when the houses were sold. So I think that three-pronged approach to a land lease, and it could be through other things as well, like community land trust, we probably could achieve the same goals. But I think that in setting it up in this way, you're able to get a traditional mortgage. There's really only one issuer of this type of financial product in Canada, and their terms basically stipulate that if it's not owned by a government entity, they won't issue this 95% loan to value leasehold mortgage, which is why I see the only way forward for these types of projects is for municipal housing development.
Deputy Mayor.
That's exactly the model of one of our proposals to our Economic Development Task Force, where the township would own a piece of land, lease it to a purchaser on a long-term lease. I don't think we have any intention of setting up a municipal housing corporation. As the mayor said, it's a lengthy process. We haven't considered it before. And I think there are alternatives that we can financially deal with.
So here's a suggestion for you. What would happen if we could identify 10 acres? You're willing to come in and build 30 or 40 houses or work with us to actually do that?
You wouldn't be the first, but yes, absolutely.
Well, not if we would lease the land. We'd have to advertise that, but you could make that work. Other than that, like setting up a municipal corporation to do what he's suggesting is highly expensive. Look at the Municipal Service Corporation, we're just finishing. Still don't have a shareholders agreement finalized with that and been at it for 2 years, but does reduce the cost of development and so on and so forth. Anyway, does anybody else have any other comments or questions? So thank you very much for your time, Daniel. We appreciate it. And
anything I could do, I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to talking to North Frontenac further.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moved by Councillor Hudel, second by Councillor Hermer. Be resolved that council receives for information the presentation from Daniel Siegel, Siegel Construction, regarding development of attainable or seniors housing through a municipal housing corporation, and thanks him for his time spent today.
Any final comments? In favor? Passed. Once again, thank you, Daniel. We appreciate your time. Okay, the adoption of the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Hermer, second by Councillor Hudel. Be it resolved that council adopts the minutes of the meeting held October 25th, 2024 as circulated.
Any comments? In favor? Carried. Business arising out of the minutes. Calaveras Fire Chief.
Moved by Councillor Hudel, second by Councillor Hermer, whereas at the meeting on March 15th, 2024, council passed resolution 12724 requesting the fire committee discuss the attendance of the Calaveras Fire Chief at the North Frontenac Council meeting prior to the consideration of the annual budget. And whereas at the meeting on June 7th, 2024, the Joint Fire Committee passed resolution 1524 approving the request. Therefore, be it resolved that as North Frontenac will be considering the 2025 budget in November 2024, it would not be beneficial for the Calaveras Fire Chief to attend North Frontenac's budget meeting in November, but to attend the council meeting when council considers the Calaveras Fire Department's annual budget to provide clarification and answer any questions. And that the CAO will notify the fire chief of the date of the council meeting when the draft budget is being considered by North Frontenac Council.
Comments, Deputy Mayor.
So how does that work timing wise?
Doesn't.
We produce we agree on a budget in November with a number for the Calaveras Fire Department on a budget which they have not yet approved. How does that work?
Corey, would you like to step in on this, please? We've had this discussion.
Actually, I would defer this to the treasurer if you're okay. We've kind of done it in the past already, so it's kind of, she'll give you a good thorough answer.
Kelly, please.
So we always do pass our budget before they approve their budget. So that's always been the case for us. We do have a standing process that if it's approved by more than what we have in the budget, we would take it from reserves, and if we have more than what they had planned on budgeting, we would put it back into reserves. So That always has been the case, so certainly the spread of time is much larger since we're looking at budget in November. But we have always passed our budget before they do their budget deliberations.
So, just hang on, John. I had a discussion with Kelly and Corey over this very thing and saying, you know, which part of the tail is wagging us and so on. But apparently there's an agreement with Addington Highlands that says they don't have to have that information in until a certain date. So until we can revise that and get together on the same page as they are, then, you know, it is what it is.
I guess my only question then is, where does that initial number come from? The number that we use in our November budgeting for 2025, the Caledonia Fire Department, is a number based on the 2024 budget number, which we've got in early 24. So where does that new 25 number come? Just 1.06 times 2024?
So what's proposed in the budget that you received last night, I did probably, I think it was 10% increase, only because there was lengthy discussion about there not being enough money being put away for capital for the Caledonia. So I'm anticipating that the proposal and what will be coming forward is going to be a significant increase to increase their contributions for capital purposes. So council will be able to have more discussion about that next Friday on November 29th. Certainly can reduce the amount that I've put forward in the budget. And then what will happen is they'll have their meeting, and if they approve more than what we've laid out in our budget, then we would look at our reserves. If they approve less than what we have laid out in the budget, we would put that into reserves specifically for Ward 1.
Swindle, do you have a question? Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Again, it comes back to a question of control. In my mind.
But until we can sit down with Addington Highlands and get everybody on the same page, you know, I agree with what you're saying, and we had this discussion among staff and myself. But, you know, it is what it is. Kelly?
And just so you're aware, so Addington Highlands also approves the Caledonia budget before they start their budget process as well. So they're much later in their budget deliberations.
Any other comments? In favor of the resolution? Opposed? Carried. Okay, electrical vehicle charge-on program.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Hermer, whereas at the meeting on November 24th, 2023, council received for information the Manager Community Development's administrative report entitled EV Funding Program, and council instructed the MCD to apply for electrical vehicle charge-on program and the zero emission vehicle infrastructure program for 2 level 3 charging stations to be installed at the municipal office. Now therefore be resolved that council receives for information an email dated November 12th, 2024 from the Manager Community Development advising the township was successful in receiving both grants to pursue the 2 level 3 fast charging stations at the municipal office, and that the project completion date is March 31st, 2025, with location and parking spots to be determined.
Any comments? Deputy Mayor?
I'd just like to thank Brooke for what must have been a convincing grant application, even though it took a year or most of a year. And that we now have a very small window to build this thing, but she assures me it's doable.
Anyone else? In favor of the resolution? Sorry. Okay. Carried. Okay, amendment to the waste bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Hermer, second by Counselor Hudel, whereas at the meeting on July 21st, 2017, council adopted bylaw 6017 to establish, maintain, and regulate a system for the disposal of municipal waste, recyclables, and other refuse. And therefore, be it resolved that council receives for information an email dated October 18th, 2024 from Laura Mannion, Public Works Administrative Assistant, advising amendments to Schedule C of bylaw 6017 are required to remove items the township no longer recycles. The council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to amend Schedule C of the Township's Waste Bylaw 6017.
Comments, and Darwin is here if we have any questions. Counselor Fowler?
So, does this mean that we'll be able to get rid of our single-use thin plastic bags and things like that, as long as they're clean?
Letter from Laura quotes what's currently in Schedule C, but we're identifying those items as they're not recyclable. So the light plastic bags, heavy plastic is just waste. We don't have a receiving facility or anybody prepared to accept these 4 items. Looking ahead, what's prompted this review is just looking at the 2-stream system that will probably be implemented by Circular Materials, and it makes us consistent with that as well. They're not accepting them either.
Herman?
Well, if styrofoam is going as waste, why does it have to be in a special bag?
Sorry, we're struggling with this. It's really just to look after housekeeping at the site. Loose insulation or styrofoam, trying to keep it bagged and help control litter at the site until it gets covered.
It'll blow around.
That isn't the question I asked. I asked, why does it have to be in a special bag? Why can't it be in with all the other garbage?
I don't know. We could review that. At one point, it was separate because recycling was on again, off again. Could also, I'd have to look at whether more of it goes to the construction demolition waste or whether it goes with household garbage. I suspect that's probably why we're splitting. Because we'd send it to the construction demolition waste. But I can review that.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing that, all in favor of the resolution? Opposed? Carried. Alternate, CME, Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act representative.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Fowler, whereas the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act recommends that a municipality designate at least one alternate community emergency management coordinator. And whereas during the review of the township's emergency plan, the Emergency Management Program Committee noted an alternate CMC had not been appointed. Now therefore be resolved, the council receives for information an email dated November 8th, 2024 from the Director of Emergency Services Fire Chief CMC recommending Brooke Drexler, Deputy Clerk, Assistant to the Planning Manager, be added as the alternate CMC. The council will consider bylaws later in the meeting to amend the emergency plan and to appoint Brooke Drexler as the alternate CMC.
Any comments? In favor? Carried. Item 9A, Clerk's Administrative Report, Communications A. Okay. All right. I've read that. Go ahead.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hudel, whereas at the meeting on October 4th, 2024, council passed Resolution 355-24, receiving for information a letter from the Municipal Policing Bureau with the 2025 annual billing statement package advising there's an increase of $178,294 over last year, and that council requested the mayor send a letter objecting to the large increases in costs for policing. Now therefore be it resolved that council receives for information an email from the treasurer advising there have been discussions with other municipalities as well as the township auditor, and that it was determined that the 2023 adjustment in the amount of $67,664 should be recognized in 2024, and more details can be provided at the November 29th, 2024 budget meeting.
Any comments? Deputy Mayor.
I don't see that this changes anything. It's $178,000 was 21.4% increase. Add the amount from 2023 and it's now a 29% increase. You're just, all we're doing is putting the carry forward in a different year. We still got to spend the money.
So 100%, we still have to spend the money. It's just a matter of where we're recognizing it by putting it in 2024, because I'm estimating that we will have a surplus. Then it makes the increase for 2025 budget less.
Will that catch up, or will we catch up in 26 then? Will that impact that subsequent year?
So I'm based on the adjustment for, because we're kind of 2 years behind. So 2023 adjustment, I suspect when we get our 2026 bill, we will have a 2024 adjustment. Similar to the 2023, but then the kind of annual would not have as much of an adjustment as we saw for 2025.
I did write a letter. It's still here. We haven't sent it off. The Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus has crafted a letter and they're sending that off. Corey has reached out to our MPP and we're waiting for responses from those sources. But there have been a number of letters that have been forwarded and they're out there. So, Corey?
So just to add what the mayor said, I have been in contact with John Jordan's office, MPP. And I've been assured John is aware of this concern and is awaiting a definitive response from Minister Kersner. So I tried to get a response for you guys this morning. So they are working on solutions. They just haven't decided what the solution is going to be yet. So Donna Donaldson, that's his assistant, did call me yesterday afternoon and apologized for not having a definitive response for our meeting today, but assured us that they are working at something. Just don't know yet what the answer is going to be. So we're just, again, our fingers are crossed that there's something here. We're not sure what it's going to be, but we are hoping for something. So we're doing our due diligence and trying to bug them a little bit.
Final comments? In favor of the resolution? Carried. Hey, item 9A, communication section
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information Section A items of the clerk's administrative report entitled Communications of Interest.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Item 9B1, resident request for speed limit review reduction on Road 509 between Snow Road and Mississippi Station.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives a letter dated September 25th, 2024 from Dave and Teresa Smith, residents requesting council consider reducing the speed limit on Road 509 between Snow Road and Mississippi Station. And that the Public Works Manager will review this request and provide a recommendation to council at a future meeting.
Comments? Counselor Fowler?
Yes, the Cane Trail meets 509 in that area. The trail well designed, but one of the problems is there's a bottleneck at the bridge. You're going to have ATVs and other traffic that are from the trail going on and across the road right on the south side of the bridge, and you've got large trucks using that bridge continually every day, and I think it's this is something that's going to happen that we might really be sorry for. I think we should try to do what we can to ensure that people are safe in this area.
Counselor Hammer?
Well, it just makes sense for such a short period, or such a short distance. There's consistency in the speed limit, be less confusing for drivers.
Yeah, Mississippi Station 60 and Snow Road is 50, but the Snow Road changes on the Snow Road side of the bridge, like maybe 1,000 feet up. And the trail ends right at Smith's driveway, but they approached me and Councillor Fowler earlier before the trail got there about reducing it because they walk it and others walk and so on. But whether or not I think it should be reduced, whether or not it goes all the way back to the superstation, it's a couple kilometers, it's like a long way and a bunch of, through swamp and bush. Where there's very few residents or whatever, it depends what Darwin comes up with, but I'm in favor of allowing staff to look at it. Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Fowler.
So we could drop the speed to 60, same as in Mississippi Station, right up to the south end of the bridge. But I'd sure like to hear what Darwin has to say about this.
Well, Mr. Mayor, through you, it was my intention, consider all of these aspects or factors that will roll into my review and I'm bringing a recommendation forward at a future meeting.
Thanks, Darwin. The trail's closed to ATVs as of December the 1st anyway, so we're almost there. Councillor Fowler?
Yes, there is some talk in the future of putting a bridge across where the old bridge used to be, for the KMP Trail. And it's a very costly thing. It could be about $3 million to put a little bridge across there. But that's in the talks for later on, it's once when they start working on the phase north of the bridge that maybe we can consider at the county level, considering putting an ATV or bridge that's capable of holding roomers and other equipment that would be using it. That's in the future, and once that happens, I think that'll make the whole area a little bit more safer.
In response, anybody listening to this or watching this particular YouTube video of our proceeding, the bridge is a long way in the future. It's not something that's going to happen in the next year or two or three. It's the abutments are there, but it's highly expensive. So we'll see. And then there's the expropriations and everything else being that. Okay, any other comments? In favor of this? That is carried. Okay, let's take a break till 10:30 and come back and start with item 10. We're now on to item 10, which is the administrative reports, CAOs, pound services.
Moved by Councillor Hudel, seconded by Councillor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Chief Administrative Officer's administrative report entitled Update Regarding Agreement for Pound Services. And the council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement with the Kingston Humane Society for pound service.
Any comments, questions? Councillor Hermer?
That's quite an increase.
It is. Like you saw the comparables. Councillor Fowler?
Just going to say the same thing, it's quite a bit more money.
Deputy Mayor?
I can't help thinking $3,000 per dog.
Actually, that would be a good thing.
I don't see we have an alternative, except I'm talking to people in the community, and the odd one says, gosh, I'd take in those dogs for nothing. But I guess we can't rely on that.
Unless if someone come along and inspect it, that would be just too much. Okay, any final comments? In favor of the resolution? Resolution's carried. 2182 Myers Cave Road, Johnson, concession road allowance, proposed land exchange. It's an update.
Moved by Councillor Fowler, second by Councillor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled 2182 Myers Cave Road, Johnson, et al. Concession road allowance proposed land exchange update. And the council is agreeable to continue with the land exchange provided the property owners complete the following. Meet with the Public Works Manager by December 16, 2024 to review the proposed location of the land to be transferred to ensure the location is suitable for access from Myers Cave Road to the water. Submit a draft survey to the township for review by April 30th, 2025. Enter into a license agreement with the township until the concession road has been closed and transferred from the township. And the council authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the license agreement, including the terms and conditions listed in the sample agreement provided with this report.
Comments? Seeing none, in favor? Carried. License agreement for Thornton.
Moved by Councillor Hudel, second by Councillor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled License Agreement Thornton. The council approves entering into a license agreement with Ispan and Danielle Kexill using the conditions in the sample agreement provided with this report and the agreement with the Thorntons being terminated.
Comments? I have some. So the parents own the property. It looks like the daughter and the stepson sort of manage it for them. And they want the water access put in their names. What happens if the parents sell the property?
Just some clarification. So the parents own a property and the daughter and her husband own a property, kind of side by side, and they both have property adjacent to this road allowance. So what they're doing is the Thorntons don't want to cancel their license agreement, and the Caxcos want to get the license agreement instead. And in the agreement, there's a provision that if the property is sold, that the agreement is automatically terminated.
No, I'm happy. Because they could sell the property down the road 6 months from now, and then it's gone to somebody else, who knows what. Okay, in favor of the resolution? Carried. Shore Road allows closure and bylaw, Noy.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Shore Road Allowance Closure and Sale Bylaw Noy. And that as required by bylaw 2023, all that part of the road allowance adjacent to part of lot 24, concession 7, geographic township of Berry, being part 36 on registered plan 13R7418 Marble Lake, be declared a surplus and sold to the adjoining owners. Appraisal of the property is not necessary as this is a shore road allowance. The council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to stop, close, and sell a portion of the shore road allowance.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Item E, renewal of the 911 primary public safety answering point.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report, renewal of 911 primary public safety answering point services agreement between the Ontario Provincial Police and the Township of North Frontenac and the Township of Central Frontenac. And that as the township is required to have a primary public safety answering point, council approves entering into an agreement jointly with the Township of Central Frontenac for the provision of 911 public emergency reporting services by the Ontario Provincial Police, and will consider a bylaw to enter into the agreement later in the meeting. The council instructs the clerk to provide the bylaw and signed agreement to Central Frontenac.
Comments? Councilor Herman.
Well, am I correct? In our share of that will be 1,281.89.
I think that's the approximate amount of our share, yeah.
That is our share. The annual cost of the service to Central and North Frontenac is $4,026. Well, I presume that's each.
That's what,
Is that, so is that per township or is that total?
just trying to find the budget line. It's the total.
Well, it would be. No, that's both. If you take 7,177 people and multiply it by 56 cents, you're gonna get about 40 whatever. Yeah, population base. So that's the answer. Yeah, okay, more, so slightly bigger. Yes. Okay, any other comments? In favor? Carried. Shore Road Allowance application for approval in principle, Scaletta.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives for information the clerk planning manager's administrative report entitled Shore Road Allowance Application for Approval in Principle, Scaletta. The council approves in principle the application to close, stop up, and sell the Shore Road Allowance lying adjacent to part of lot 23, concession 6, geographic township of Barry, Cashwhack.
Comments? In favor? Carried. Manager of Community Development, Bytown Motorcycle Association, 2025 agreement renewal.
Moved by Counselor Hudel, second by Counselor Fowler. Be it resolved, the council receives for information the Manager of Community Development's administrative report entitled Bytown Motorcycle Association 2025 Agreement, and that council will consider a bylaw later in the meeting to sign the 2025 agreement with the BMA to honor the OFTR trail permit on the Crown Roads within North Frontenac Parklands.
Any comments? So just for my edification, this is you, Corey, because Brooks away today. When we initially approved this agreement several years ago, we had concerns about the use of motorbikes on the trail, damaging the roads and noise. That has not proven to be, everything's kept under control.
Yes, no concerns.
Any other comments? In favor of the resolution? The resolution is carried. Item H, Public Works Manager, services related to blue box material and agreement with circular materials.
Moved by Counselor Fowler, second by Counselor Hudel. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Public Works Manager's administrative report entitled Services Related to Blue Box Material Agreement with Circular Materials. The council authorizes the Chief Administrative Officer to sign the required agreements with Circular Materials for the transition period on behalf of the township. The council also authorizes the Chief Administrative Officer to sign documents such as change orders or notices that may require approval during the contract period. And the council directs the Public Works Manager to review options to manage non-eligible sources post-transition and to bring these to council for consideration at a future meeting. The council instructs the treasurer to create a recycling reserve to be used for financial stabilization during the blue box materials transition. The source of funding is from Stewardship Ontario revenue received for the period of January to June 2025. The funds will be used for the operating budget in 2026 to assist the transition of the blue box program, and the target balance will be zero at the end of 2026, and the recycling reserve will be dissolved.
And we have Darwin with us if necessary. Anybody have any comments? All in favor of the resolution? Carried. Okay, external committees, local boards, task force, etc. Well, I did not rerun the agenda off. Forgot one, apparently. I read the items, I didn't run the agenda off. I'm using a hard copy, which should be right here. Electrical vehicle charging stations update.
Moved by Counselor Regent, second by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that council receives for information the Manager of Community Development's administrative report entitled Electric Vehicle Charging Stations Update. The council approves sole sourcing of the electrical vehicle charging station installation from project management by Enveri.
Any comments? In favor? That resolution is carried. Okay, now item 11A, Joint Health and Safety Committee.
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that council receives for information the minutes of the Joint Health and Safety Committee dated August 30th, 2024.
Any comments? In favor? Carried. Item B, Economic Development Task Force.
Moved by Counselor Regent, second by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that council receives for information the October 21st, 2024 notes of the Economic Development Task Force. And that council approves the EDTF's 2025 work plan. That council approves the EDTF's updated terms of reference. And that council approves in advance of the 2025 budget, the EDTF spending $3,000 for the 2025 Winterfest so that the EDTF can work at getting the event organized. And that council approves in advance of the 2025 budget, the EDTF registering for the March 2025 trade show at a cost of $791. The council defers the municipal campground proposal for 2025 budget for Resolution 19524 until a later date due to other priorities.
Are there any comments? In favor of this resolution? Oh, sorry, Councilor Good? We're just approving, we're advancing this amount. So if we approve that $3,000, that means we're into Winterfest for $3,000. Okay. Whether we'll, if we decide next week we don't want to do it, then maybe it's a different scenario. But right now we're saying, give them a chance, let's get them started. Do I have that right, Stephanie? Okay. All right, so any other comments? We're in favor of this? That is carried. Okay, Economic Development Task Force.
Moved by Counselor Regent, second by Counselor Good. Be it resolved, the council receives for information the notes of the Environmental Task Force dated October 29th, 2024, and that council approves the Environmental Task Force's 2025 work plan.
Comments? In favor of the resolution? Carried. Does anyone wish to give notice of bringing a motion for the next meeting? Seeing none. We have no motions, written notice which has been given previously. So that's okay. Councilor verbal reports. Okay, so I'm up first on this list. So as you all know, I'm elected the county warden for the next year. Started Wednesday. I think it's a real honor, and it's an opportunity to not only showcase North Frontenac, but also to showcase the county of Frontenac. There's 13 members, so we'll see how it all goes. And Kevin Farrell, CAO for the county last night, because I'm in charge of making sure you're up to speed, so be prepared. So one of the councilors and I had a brief discussion about what the priorities are and so on. And apparently at the first meeting of the year, the councilors or the board will sit down and they decide what the priorities are going to be for the year. Some may drop off, some may continue, some may be added. Okay. So the council meeting for the county was held on Wednesday. And one of the big topics was user fees for the PNP Trail. This was a little surprising because we were always under discussion it was going to be a free trail. I made the point that as soon as it gets to North Frontenac, you want to start charging fees, so that felt like a lead balloon. So, they weren't interested in hearing that. They had been approached by, they being the county, had been approached by the Frontenac ATV Club, wanting a user fees, wanting an agreement similar to what we have with ETOA and Bytown Motorcycle Club and the Ottawa Valley Motorcycle or ATV Club. Only it was different in the fact that if you wanted to ride the trail, you had to belong to a club, and they'd be more than willing to take your membership at $150, and you become a member of that club. And Councilor Fowler and I were successful, along with some others, in getting the council to defer this to the spring, where we said we want you to look at the way we do business in North Frontenac. So we issue our own permits, and then we get paid by the club, different clubs, to allow their riders to work or to ride on the trails. And then we turn that money back into maintaining the trails. So they agreed to that. So I was going to meet with Brooke today, discuss how much work it actually is, but she's off sick, and I know she has a meeting next week, I think, with county staff as to this very thing. So I just don't think we should be giving away the ship with a little bit of a fight. So, by the way, I forgot to say the deputy warden is Bill Saunders out of Frontenac Island, specifically Howe Island. Okay, I want to acknowledge the fact that Back 40 Artisan Cheese, south of Snow Road, won the Sustainability Award from the Frontenac Business Group. Turns out they are the number 2 business in North Frontenac Township, second only to Bon Echo Park. So that's really nice. And they depend on the trail cyclists right up, and they were going out on the highway. Now they can take the trail right up within 1 kilometer or 2 of their, of the road that takes them into this outlet. So if you're in the area, take some time, go visit them. It's all local stuff. They make great food. They have a license, so you're good to go. I also want to talk about Myers Cave Lodge, and I'm not in the habit of promoting an individual business over other businesses. I don't think we should be doing that. I think it sends the wrong message. But they were successful in procuring the annual retreat for the Ontario Highlands Tourism Association or organization, board of directors, this past week, and they shared part of the proceeds with Hunters Creek by having one of the dinners at Hunters Creek Golf Club. I thought it was pretty good, and that was a good way to showcase North Frontenac as well. Apparently, they all the members approved of the venue in North Frontenac, but we'll see how that works out in the long run. Can't hurt. So one other thing I wanted to talk about. Probably not going to matter. All right, we'll let it go. Anyway, so that's it. That's my report. So the next one is, there's Municipal Services Corporation. It's proceeding. There's a job offering out or an advertisement out for the CAO of that corporation. Well, I know I want to talk about budget. And I haven't met with the North Frontenac Lake Association. The budget for the county is about 5.48%. And it includes that may move a little because there are cost sharing arrangements with Kingston and Frontenac Islands and so on. And there's money moving back and forth. It's not going to move a tremendous amount, but it is going to move some. As part of the budget negotiations, we elected or made the decision to hire another economic development officer. And that's a cost of $129,000 a year. So we set aside for 2025, $43,000 that goes into a reserve. And then the following year, that $43,000 is already in the budget. We add another $43,000 and we bring the $43,000 out of the reserve and we hire that individual. So all the money's there. In the following year, there's an additional $43,000 to take care of that money that's no longer in the reserve. It went through barely. The decision was what, 5-3, and the mayor of South Frontenac was kind of doing this. We finally agreed, and then at the meeting on Wednesday, he said, "I'd like to reduce that to a 2-year contract." And some of us were successful in increasing that to a 3-year contract. Then we'll see how that goes. Because with everybody has the same opinion, what will the economic development officer do for us? How will we see that? How will we measure that? How can we be objective and so on and so forth? So that individual will start in 2026 and money there, and it's for the entire county, so that'll help us. That's the board. So that's it. So, Councilor Good?
But I still. I got it. Nothing with the lake associations, but I do have road allowances, closures, lake shore allowances, closures, and concessions. Ongoing.
Councilor Regent?
The Lakelands Family Health Team, our next meeting is on December 9th. I have requested that the Land O'Lakes Community Services start sending me their minutes of their board meetings. We'll see what happens. Lake Association, nothing new at the moment. And Corey and I finally went to our police services board meeting yesterday. It was mainly administrative. Many of our meetings will be in closed session, but we will endeavor to provide you with whatever information we're allowed. We picked a chair and a vice chair. The very nice group of people who clearly know what they're doing. So that was lovely yesterday, I have to say. And I think it'll give the rest of us some insight into exactly how some of these things work, including budgets. So I look forward to Cory and I updating you on these things.
Thank you. Counselor Hoodle.
Yeah, I have no updates as my meetings are actually next week. But I did go on the trail ride on this week on the KPN trail, and it was very interesting. One thing that I learned that it's very confusing about whose trail is who and who pays what for passes. So if you guys could figure that out, that'd be great.
Right now, it's free. But there is going to be upkeep requirements for the trail. And it may end up very well end up being user pays. And it has to be reasonable. When we had that discussion, we made the point that it's too expensive what you're asking for. We can do it for a lot less and so on and so forth. So they're looking at all that, but yes. And part of the trail from 509 north, except for the first 200 or 300 meters, is owned by MVCA yet. So we'll see how that all goes. Okay, Counselor Hermer,
Nothing to report.
Counselor Fowler.
Yes, EOTA, we had a meeting last week. During that meeting, we agreed to reach out to the MTO to appoint a mediator so that we can try to get the one pass system going. There's difficulties when the two groups get together to get things done. Also, North Frontenac will receive $25,000 for the Schooner Lake Road work that's coming up. Is that correct? Kelly?
I'm not sure if we'd received,
Or are you aware of this?
I
No.
yeah, I think this is, I don't think we'd received that information yet.
Pardon?
I don't know if we'd received that information yet.
I think that's what's going to happen. It's in the budget. Regarding seniors and law enforcement together, there was a presentation that I couldn't make in Parham. It went well. And we had a meeting yesterday. I got the details of the meeting, but I had a doctor's appointment. I couldn't attend it. And that's all I have.
Nothing else from council that I missed? Counselor Ingalls, Deputy Mayor Ingalls, sorry.
Nothing to report.
Okay. That takes us to the introduction and reading of bylaws.
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce the following bylaws that have been circulated to all members of council. 2024-62 to sign agreement for pound services with the Kingston Humane Society. 2024-67 to amend the township zoning bylaw. 2024-68 to adopt a fees and charges bylaw. 2024-69 to close, stop up and sell ashore road allowance. 2024-70 to sign an agreement with the OPP for primary public safety answering point services. 2024-71 to appoint alternate community emergency program coordinator. 2024-72 to sign an agreement with Bytown Motorcycle Association for use of Crown Roads. 2024-73 to amend Schedule C of Waste Bylaw 6017 and Bylaw 74 to amend Bylaw 8422 emergency plan for the alternate CMC, and that these bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Yes, you can.
Tara, did I miss a bylaw numbering process that changed? The end of 23? You're now saying bylaw 2024-68 compared to bylaw 63-23. What, did we miss something?
So the change is because of our new iCompass system, and it numbers them that way. So that's what's happened. So that software has made that change.
That is different from the resolution numbering. Got it.
No one said iCompass was a great software package. Okay, so is there any comments on this? All in favor of the motion? Carried. We'll now go into public forum. Is there anyone online? or in the council chamber who has any comments on any of the items that we've talked about today?
If there's anybody online that wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none.
We will now go to closed session. Terry?
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that council retires to closed session at 11:01 a.m. to adopt minutes of a closed meeting held October 4th, 2024, to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, specifically appointments to a task force, and to review a request under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
In favor? Carried. Welcome back, everyone. Council has come back from a closed meeting of council where they discussed personal matters about an identifiable individual. And they reviewed a request under the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act. Confirmatory bylaw.
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-75, being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of council for its regular meeting held November 22nd, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Are there any comments? In favor? Carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Counselor Regent, seconded by Counselor Good. Be it resolved that council adjourns the meeting at 11:23 a.m. until November 29th, 2024, or at the call of the chair.
Any final comments? All in favor? Carried. See everyone next week.